Welcome to the debate. If you actually look at the data on teacher burnout, the educators with the most empathy are usually the first ones to quit.
Oh, yeah, always. It's brutal.
Right. So today we are looking at the Wayfinder crew profiles, specifically for school administrators trying to balance these archetypes to maximize student outcomes and, prevent that exact burnout. Who needs to serve as the foundational anchor of a teaching team?
Which is a massive question for administrators right now.
Exactly. And I take the position that structural, data-driven profiles, so the quartermasters and cartographers, simply must be that foundation.
Well, and I come at it from a completely different way because I argue that if you don't anchor your team with relational, highly adaptable profiles like the signal officers and deckhands, all that structure is literally just beautifully organized noise.
Organized noise. Okay, let's look at the actual mechanics of burnout here. When testing season hits, or, a team is drowning in end-of-term grading.
The absolute worst time of the year.
Yeah, exactly. A quartermaster isn't just checking off a to-do list. They are building automated rubrics that absorb the administrative shockwave. Meanwhile, the cartographer is mapping the exact data points needed so the team isn't guessing where students are struggling. The operational system carries the weight so the human beings don't have to.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that systems carry the weight of human beings. Let me tell you why. You can have the most brilliant, targeted lesson design from a cartographer, but if a student is completely disengaged or dealing with trauma, that spreadsheet leads absolutely nowhere.
Well, hold on.
No, let me finish this point. You need the signal officer. They are the ones actually championing student voice and translating cold strategy into, well, human connection. Without them, the cartographer is just managing a database, not a classroom.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on how these profiles actually interact. That exact empathy is precisely why the signal officer is a massive flight risk. They naturally overextend themselves emotionally, like constantly.
That's kind of just the job sometimes.
But it doesn't have to be. That's where the cartographer acts as a vital shield. The cartographer's logic and data-driven boundaries physically prevent the signal officer from overcommitting and burning out. The data protects the empathetic teacher.
That is a compelling argument, but have you considered that a shield can quickly become a cage? When administrators over-index on data and procedure, quartermasters frequently become paralyzed by their own rigidity.
Okay, paralyzed is a strong word.
But it happens. When a lesson completely bombs halfway through, or a fire drill interrupts a crucial exam, the quartermaster stalls out. You need the deckhand's real-time momentum and flexibility to pivot instantly and keep the classroom alive.
Wait, let me push back on your defense of the deckhand's flexibility. Because a ship constantly adjusting its sails to catch every passing breeze is eventually going to run adrift.
Not necessarily.
It absolutely is. Over a 10-month school year, if the deckhand is just executing in the moment without checking the long-term map or the quartermaster's operational supplies, you don't get a dynamic classroom. You get absolute chaos.
But sometimes that chaos is just the messy reality of learning, which is why, if we are advising a first-year teacher, telling them to focus purely on the quartermaster's compliance and routines is a complete trap.
A trap?
Yes, you are practically guaranteeing an adversarial classroom. Starting out by channeling the signal officer builds the crucial relational trust you need for any procedural system to take hold later. You cannot manage a student who doesn't fundamentally know you value them.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because telling a first-year teacher to just, read the room and build relationships without giving them baseline survival routines is a recipe for disaster.
They figure it out, though.
No, they burn out. If they don't establish grading systems and behavioral procedures in week one, there is zero structural foundation for that trust to stand on. They will be way too overwhelmed to even exercise emotional intelligence.
Well, I think we are circling the core Wayfinder philosophy here, right? Which is that leaders must actively mix these diverse profiles to offset their inherent watchouts. The cartographer's logic balances the signal officer's empathy, and the deckhand's flexibility loosens the quartermaster's rigidity. We clearly just disagree on where the center of gravity should be when a team is fundamentally imbalanced. I will always bet on relationships first.
And I will always bet on structure. But the great paradox of school administration is that absolute structure doesn't restrict empathy.
It might actually be the only thing that sustains it. You can't be a bleeding heart if you're bleeding out from administrative chaos. Ultimately, overlapping these archetypes is what directly improves the daily student experience.
Absolutely. Which leaves anyone listening with the task of evaluating their own classroom crew, figuring out who they are, and more importantly, who they need standing next to them.